Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to another episode on Developing with Action Jake. On today's episode, I bring on one of my friends, mentors, and roommates, Justin Feldman. Justin is the owner of a company called Wealthy Body, where he helps lead men to make their lives more intentional, healthy, and wealthy. We dig into a lot of details as I interview Justin about his entrepreneurial journey, his own health challenges and how he overcame them. And we cover deep and sensitive topics such as addiction, how to overcome it, and exploring the world through the lens of responsibility and authenticity. I hope you enjoy this episode on Developing with Action Jake. Justin, my friend, welcome to the show. For all the listeners, this is Justin Feldman, owner of Wealthy Body. He's also my roommate, so we get to do this podcast in person. And he's also my health coach, and we're going to dive a little bit deeper into what he does. But for a little context, Justin, I know you've had an incredible health journey over your life, and especially starting from pretty much when you were born, right? I want to hear a little bit about your health journey and what has led you into starting your company, Wealthy Body.
Absolutely, man. Well, I just want to say first and foremost, thank you, brother, for having me on this podcast. It's an honor to be here, man. And my goal for this is I just want to, serve your listeners and show up and just give as much value as possible. And it's been an honor and a blessing just to get to know you at a deeper level and just see the impact and what you're really looking to do and the changes you're looking to bring into the world. So thank you so much for having me, man. And so my background, I can just kind of share a little bit about me. And so I run Wealthy Body, which is a coaching program specifically for high performing men who are looking to really make health a enhancement in the rest of their life. So using health as a tool to create a wealthy life, wealthy body. And so to bring it back, my story is I was born with, I always say God blessed me with a lot of health issues. God blessed me with bilateral club feet. So when I was a baby, my feet were sideways. They had to cut I showed you yesterday, I got scars all throughout my feet, and my feet were sideways. They had to cut my tibial tendon and rotate that back into place. And I was just blessed, and I say blessed a lot because it really did bring me on this journey. But growing up, I just had a lot of health issues. So feet were sideways. They had to cut my tibial tendon, rotate them back into place. I grew up with a lot of just ailments, kidney stones, appendicitis. I had my ankles, my teeth. I had multiple teeth removed and a lot of dental work. And the biggest thing for me was I wore a metal back brace for over 10 years. I basically had degeneration of my spine at the age of 13, and doctors didn't really know why it was happening. And it just took me on this long journey. As one of our mentors, I'm sure we'll mention him a lot, Paul Chek, he calls it the pain teacher. And for me, grew up with a lot of teaching. And so that was ultimately what got me into the health space, and what got me into this world is having to, the medical system, didn't treat me as I would have liked. For me, growing up in high school, I was at a point where I just woke up one day. I played baseball all my life, and I was really passionate about it. I wanted to play in the major leagues. Probably wasn't good enough, but I woke up one day and just my back started hurting. I didn't know why. It just got worse and worse and worse. Doctors, MRIs, CAT scans, the works, and they just couldn't figure out what was going on. And ultimately they started giving me muscle relaxers, painkillers. Vicodin was my breakfast. It was oatmeal and Vicodin was. How old? I was about 13 years old at this point, 13, 14 years old. And so that was kind of that was a pivotal moment for me. It really brought me down into a dark part of my life. I remember walking my dog one day, and it was, I had been on painkillers for months at this point, and even just touching my knees was hard, and doctors would give me they were called branch blocks and steroid shots. They would, like, these giant needles. They put it into my spine, and I was at a point where I wasn't hanging out with friends, and I was just really depressed. And I was walking my dog one day, and I just got on the ground, and I was doped up on pain medicine, and just got on the ground and just was holding the leash and just lied down in the middle of the road. And I don't know what I was hoping to happen there, but it was a dark time for me. And so ultimately I can go through different parts of my life, but really it allowed me from a young age to see how valuable my health is. And one day I just kind of had this aha moment. It's like, I don't want to be this way. Like, my life is precious, my life is valuable. And really, it was at that point when I was lying down, it's like, am I going to stay down or am I going to get up? And so I chose to get up, and it's a long journey, and I'm still going through. We're all going through our journey, as I always say. But that was kind of the pivotal moment for me to start taking back control. And I always say to clients, and I said this to you, it's like, your body and your health, there's not much you can control in this world. And I believe the one thing you can control, to at least more than most things, is your body and your health and what you do with that. So that's ultimately, my journey. I can get into how I got into Wealthy Body if you want. Want me to touch on that?
Yeah, I want to totally. First of all, I want to say, like, it's crazy to hear this background, because knowing Justin, he's like the healthiest, like, most fit person, one of the most fit people I know. And so, like, hearing all that background, it's like, it's almost unbelievable. But it's like, at the same time, it's like, I guess we all have our context and why we, do the things we do. And so, yeah, I did want to lead into, so it's obvious that health is a passion of yours, and you've found that health in yourself, and you continue to discover that deeper levels that for yourself. But I know you have this calling to help other people with the knowledge that you've gained, the experience you've gained. And not only now you have Wealthy Body, but you've started previous companies in the past that were dedicated around the same thing. So that is my question, is just tell us a little bit more about Wealthy Body and how you're helping men gain ownership over their lives and health.
Yeah. Beautiful question. And so it really kind of, just continuing the story, really, it kind of got to the point for me, like I was saying, I started taking back control of my health. I followed my first 3-month program, the 3-month program, and it really did change my life. I went from, being in a ton of pain, and I don't know who said this, or maybe I'm just saying this, but I think pain a lot of times is the compass to purpose. Pain leads to purpose. And so for me, going through a workout plan and spending time actually learning about my body and myself, it was very painful. I remember, like, the first time I did a workout, like, I could barely touch my knees. I was in a lot of pain. But over time, when I kind of led into the pain, it sparked a growth shift in me. And so I started taking care of myself. I just started learning, like, this body that we live in, man, it's capable of so much. It's capable of, we don't even, like, even with your leg, man, like, I know that you're going to not only recover quickly, but it's going to be, I think you're going to come back stronger. And that's all, it really starts with the mind. And so for me, I got into Wealthy Body because ultimately I had to do my own healing first. And I'm always on a healing journey, but I really started to understand that there's a lot of men who are going through a similar journey. So just to quickly explain, went to college for exercise science and just really became obsessed with the human body and what it's capable of. Because as I started getting stronger, going through my workout plan and started exercising more, I just started noticing just little shifts in the way I thought about things, the way I felt. And ultimately, it brought me to this place where I didn't see working out as just a piece of how I physically look. It is embodiment of who I am. And so I got into personal training, started working with clients, started helping them there. But I hit a wall in that aspect where I worked my way up in a gym. It was full of like other trainers who had like bachelor's and master's degree in exercise science, and I just kind of hit a wall where I just, as I made my own strides, I realized that there's so many other people who are looking to get in better shape. So I began to have this passion for entrepreneurship and like helping more people, because I was just like, I was burning out. I was working like 8 to 10 hour days, which for personal training is a ton, because you're basically pouring into people all day. And so I left, and I started getting into the entrepreneurial world. Long story short, I started my first company. It failed within 6 months, and I kind of pivoted and got into the marketing space. I learned email copywriting. I started learning about sales and marketing, and I started seeing the which I see with so many men, is I started seeing the wealth aspect. I started making my first $5, $6, $7, $10, $11,000 months, and I was just like, can I curse here?
Yeah.
Holy shit! Like this is incredible. But at the same time, I started putting my health on the back burner again. I would, eat out because it was easier. I'd go to fast food restaurants. It was quick. It was easy. I would, wake up and I would just grab my computer and just get to work, and I would just miss workouts. And even if I didn't miss a workout, I'd just sit in poor posture all day, and it just started dragging me down. It started affecting me, and to the point where I started getting really severe migraines. Like I said, God's blessed me with being very sensitive to a lot of stress. Like stress affects me very easily, and so I started getting severe migraines. It started impacting my energy levels. I remember I definitely had adrenal issues. I remember being in bed at night and just like feeling my heart just like racing, and I was like, I couldn't turn it off. I couldn't turn off. And so for me, that was ultimately, I invested in my own coach, multiple coaches, and started learning the power of holistic health, and just started asking the question, can I be healthy and still lean into my mission? Can I be healthy and still create wealth? And ultimately, it took me getting fired from multiple clients I was working with and started losing money to be like, I need to ask this question. I need to move into this a little bit more. And so that's ultimately what led me into Wealthy Body. Is I was good at copywriting. I didn't have a passion for it though. And really, since I was, the whole time I was doing that, I had coaching clients. I was like 1 or 2 clients I was working with, and I just realized that this is something I really want to do. And I think that, like, I see men like you and men that we've worked with, is when you can take care of your health and boost your energy levels and your focus, it just pours so much more into the rest of your life. So that's ultimately how I got into it, and it's been a journey, man.
Heck yeah. Well, dude, you mentioned a bunch there: mindset, holistic health, balance. Me working with you, which I know I've made a lot of progress. I still feel I'm actually healthier than I've ever been. I know Justin wants me moving along further and progressing, but it's one step at a time. And you also mentioned my leg, which I haven't really mentioned too much about it, but I did break my leg skateboarding on this skateboard. And it's good to remember that pain is a teacher, and pain reveals your purpose. And I have follow-up questions for a lot of the things you mentioned, so I think for right now, let's talk on this, and then we'll go circle back. But I do want you to talk a little bit about that, because the experience I had, I broke my leg May 19th this year, 2023. And it was weird because as soon as it happened, I had this thought that came to me that it's like, this is supposed to happen. And really now it's about a month since the incident, and more has come up of how meaningful this is, and how this is really an opportunity for me to kind of settle down and not be racing around and doing a million things at once, because I physically can't. So yeah, could you talk a little bit more about the pain teacher that I know Paul Chek talks about, and how pain can reveal our purpose?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with myself, and then we can go into your leg, and there's just so much to this, but ultimately, like I said, I believe God doesn't make mistakes. God doesn't make mistakes, whatever your lingo is there, source, universe. And for me, it gave me a lot of peace when I started thinking that way. It gave me a lot of peace because in my life, I had a lot of, and maybe listeners, you can relate to this, but I had a lot of resentment and a lot of anger and a lot of just built up, pent up resistance to what I've gone through my whole life. I mean, from the day I was born with club feet and being put on ADD medication my whole life and saying, thinking I was dumb and all the pain that I've gone through since, and I'm still, I'm working through stuff still to this day, and I had a lot of resentment, and I was like, why the fuck is this happening to me? And when I started shifting my mentality around God doesn't make mistakes, I chose this, my soul, we can get kind of spiritual here, but I believe my soul chose this body for a reason. And so when I started shifting into that mentality, it opened the door. On one of our coaching calls recently, we have group calls inside of our program. I talked about this idea of the map is not the territory, meaning we all have a map. The map is our mind, the way we see the world in this moment. But the territory is the reality. It's actually what is actually going on. And a lot of times, it's not easy when you're dealing with pain, and I'm dealing with pain, and maybe the person listening to this podcast right now, you're dealing with some kind of pain. It's not easy to look beyond the pain, because it's distraction. It's difficult. It doesn't feel. It's not comfortable. And so ultimately, when I started realizing that there is something this is happening for me, not to me, that was just a massive shift in my life. And so, to answer the question, ultimately, I believe that, like I said, everything happens for a reason, and that gets to be our guide, because whether it's physical, mental, emotional, people keep coming into your life who are, are negative or manipulative, whatever the situation is. What I find with myself and so many men that I've worked with, it's easy to kind of look away and just ignore that it's even happening, because it's more comfortable. But at the end of the day, the pain teacher will not let up. I had a quote that let me actually pull it up. There's a great quote that I think I said to you recently, and it goes that the soul. So I talked about the soul before, and I believe that we all have a soul, and the quote that I read is, the soul is able to stay true in its experience and naturally recognize the evolutionary gifts that arrive, often wrapped in unexpected packages. So what that means is the pain teacher is an unexpected package that comes into your life, whether you actually want it or not. It comes into your life as a guiding force for you to grow, or for you to just stay stuck. Without, everything is, I talk about a lot. There's really 3 levels to breakthrough, 3 levels to transformation. Number 1 is you have to have the right strategy. You have to have the right path to get there. If you're following the wrong path, you're just not going to see results in whatever, want to get a 6-pack or you want to make more money. You need a path to get there. At the end of the day, though, if you're not telling yourself the right stories, or having positive stories, then you're never going to follow the strategy anyways. And the last piece of that is state. It's like being in a positive state. I want to honor you, man, because like I have worked with a lot of men, and men who have gone through way less than a spiral fracture from their tibia down to their feet, and have just very easily slipped into like a victim mentality, and just said, this is like, why is this happening to me, and just let this overcome them. But ultimately, the key is, if you can stay in a positive state, that's going to affect the stories which you tell. And then that's gonna allow you to more readily follow the strategy to get to your goal. And so, to answer the question, and that was kind of a long-winded response, but at the end of the day, I believe the pain teacher is something that comes into your life, and to not look at the pain teacher is to not embrace your own physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual development. And so it's so crucial to look at it and know that, Paul Chek says, without a map, all roads will get you there. So it's like, if you don't understand the territory, the terrain, and the terrain meaning the pain teacher, which is knowing that shit's going to get hard. Things are going to happen in life. And if you can shift the story to this is happening for me, boom, then you get to get excited about it. It's like, this sucks. This hurts. This is hard, but I'm fucking here for it. Totally. So yeah, man, I'd say that'd be my answer.
Dude, well, you bring up a lot more things that we could go off on a lot of tangents on, but I'll try and keep it brief. I think the one thing I took away from that is this idea of like ownership. Like, you're not blaming the external environment. Like I could be blaming like, oh, my shoe or like my skateboard or like the skate park, like shouldn't have happened. But instead you take responsibility. It's like, okay, I broke my leg, or I am dealing with this pain. It's not, you know, certainly there's factors involved, but when you take that responsibility, like, okay, what can I do now to grow from this and then ease up on the pain? And I know that we've talked a lot about this. I think that kind of viewpoint is pretty radical in a sense, because especially like, I feel like modern day, it's in politics or wherever you're looking, it's so easy to just see people blaming others and blaming, the other side. And as soon as you have that switch of like, you know what, wait a minute, this is my responsibility, I'm going to take ownership. I know that's been a huge pivotal thing for me. And I think me going through this experience of breaking my leg, I've been able to have that mindset of like, again, it's not me blaming myself, but it's just me taking ownership of this experience and being like, okay, I'm going to focus on the positive. What can I learn from this? What am I going to gain from this? I'm not at all going to be looking at the negative, because how's that going to help me? Did you have something to riff on that, or do you want me to move to the next question? Okay. So let's go to the mindset piece. Because I've been doing some coaching as well. I'm not doing holistic health-based coaching. I'm, teaching others how to code and break into the tech industry. But it's so interesting, the parallels between any sort of coaching or mentorship business. It's like, it doesn't matter what the medium is, health, technology, wealth, whatever it is. It seems that the core central piece of it all is mindset, from getting a person from point A to point B. I want you to riff on that a little bit. Just talk about the role of mindset and how, when it comes to making life changes regarding health.
Yeah, we can go through a whole rabbit hole on this, but the short answer, the short sentence is, your internal world dictates your external world, period. And so mindset is absolutely everything. It's kind of like I just said, strategy, stories, and state. If your mindset is lacking, you're failing before you even get started. I like to use the analogy of the men I work with, who I have a lot of men that join Wealthy Body who are making good money. And I always use the analogy of, Jake, say me and you we're at a park, and I walked up to you, man, and I'm going to do some simple math here. I'm like, I'm going to give you $100 if you give me $50 in return. Would you do that? Sure. Yeah, because why?
Because I'll free $50.
Exactly. But let's switch it around, and I say I'm going to give you $50 if you give me $100 in return. Would you do that?
No, bad trade.
Right. Why is that? It's because you're not getting a return on your investment. And so mindset is so important, and there's so much to touch on here. But all mindset really is it's a belief system. And if you don't believe that you can accomplish a certain goal, if you don't believe from the beginning that it's a winnable fight, you're either, number one, not going to start the battle, or number two, you're going to die in battle because you don't believe you can actually win. It's like, a lot of boxers will talk. I'm training boxing right now, and me and my coach talk about how, the fighter that loses, he doesn't ever lose to the opponent. He loses to himself. And the external result is the opponent beating him. And that's where the mind comes in, is ultimately, if you don't believe, you're going to sabotage, whether it is literally you're just like, I'm done, I can't do this, or a lot of times the men that I work with and myself, I've seen this many times, is we tell ourselves, or I'll tell myself that I'm gonna get into boxing, or I'm going to make $1 million, or whatever the thing is, and it feels good saying that, and other people hear me say these things and like, oh, like that's such a badass goal, like good for him. But at the end of the day, I know in my heart and in my truth that I don't believe it's possible, and so I'm gonna find some excuse along the way, a lot of times subconsciously, to fail, to fall off. And so mindset is the key to it. Without the right mindset, it's just, success is impossible. You can have the right, I talk about the trifecta, right? In order to reach a goal, you must have three things ultimately. You need the right strategy, which we talked about before. Having the right plan of actions is important. If you don't have that, you'll fail. Secondly, you need the right support system. Inside of our program, we say, we hold each other. I always say it's like we hold each other at account for our accountability. The Bible says iron sharpens iron as one man sharpens another. Having a support system is awesome, but at the end of the day, and these all bleed into each other. At the end of the day, though, if you are constantly, Tony Robbins says, where your focus goes, your energy flows. And so if your mind is constantly going to failure and shame and guilt and all these negative vibrational emotions, think about it. Your thoughts create emotions. Emotions are just energy in motion. That's going to then dictate your actions, subconscious and conscious. And so it's just a vicious cycle. Mindset's the key to all this.
Dude, that's well said. And again, yeah, we could go down a deep rabbit hole. I do want to say focus here, but I think there's a lot of insights there. And it's just, again, it goes back to what we were saying before of how the external world is just a reflection of your inner world. Mm-hmm. And I mean, not to get too much into the manifestation stuff, but they say if you can feel a certain way, whatever it is you want, then it eventually will manifest, because your brain wants to see what you're feeling. And anyway, not to go too deep down that rabbit hole, I wanted to shift a little bit to holistic health and really, like, what is holistic health for listeners? And based on what you do, why would someone want to work with like a holistic health practitioner?
I love it. So holistic, I think right now is a term that's thrown around a lot, like on YouTube and social media. It's like, I'm a holistic coach. And I think that I really, it kind of sucks that it's becoming like a well-known term. So a lot of times when that happens, people start looking down on that. But when I think of holistic, it's really, I'm not a fan of the word balance, because while balance is important, it is a lot of times when I hear the word balance, I see people consume the word balance. It leads to mediocrity. And what I mean by that is I've worked with a lot of men who they try to find balance in their life, and by finding balance, it's like, half the time they'll eat shit and they'll sabotage themselves, the other half they'll try and be good, and it just outweighs each other. And so holistic is really, when I work with a client, I'll use Craig Renz, for example. We mentioned him before this call. Craig, he came to me. He was 537 pounds, I believe, when he first started, and he was on his deathbed. He was literally, the doctors gave him a 7% chance to live. He is a serial entrepreneur. He was in real estate and had started I think 10, 15 different businesses. And because he had gone down that path, but let his health he's an extreme example, but I think in some level it shows up in everyone. Everything else started falling apart. Like his health, he almost died. He lost all of his money to zero, and probably less than that. He went into debt. His family, he got multiple divorces. His children stopped talking to him, didn't want to be a part of him. And so when I hear something like that and see something like that, that is the opposite of holistic. I think maybe we start with what is the opposite of holistic, and the opposite of holistic is being laser focused on one area. Pathological. Yeah, exactly. And just destroying. Basically, it's destruction. I talk about in life, it's important men need mission. And I know there's probably women listening to this. I work with men, but I think everyone needs a purpose. Everyone needs a mission. And inside of mission, there are ways that you can align with that mission, with that purpose, with that dream in your life, dream affirmative actions. When I hear the word holistic, it is ultimately having decisions, choices, and habits that align with your soul's greater purpose on this planet. And so that why, to back to your question, why should someone work with someone like me or someone as a holistic coach or practitioner, is ultimately it is an abundant way of thinking of, like I said with my story, what if it was possible to look amazing, feel amazing, make a shitload of money, have incredible relationships in your life? What if it was possible to have all that at once? And ultimately, when I think of holistic, it is finding a structure that allows you to focus on yourself. We call this the I, so that you can actually give back and be a role model and a leader and a provider for your we, which is your spouse, your loved ones, and then ultimately give back to the rest of the world. So to go micro on this is, I see it as, if you don't take care of your sleep, like for example, if for some reason I was there when I was doing copywriting, I'll stay up till 2 or 3 in the morning. I'd wake up at 7 in the morning. I would wake up with low energy. They actually have shown in research that someone who gets less than 6 hours of sleep, no matter what your body fat percentage is, like for me, I'm around 11-12% body fat. If I get less than 6 hours of sleep, that next day my blood sugar regulation is the same as a type 2 diabetic. So with that said, let's just say I don't get enough sleep. I wake up the next morning, my body doesn't handle carbohydrates and sugar properly. What happens when that happens is your blood sugar gets all irregulated, your mood is up and down, you're not able to, your brain, they've actually also shown that when you don't get good sleep, you're basically a sober alcoholic because your brain is intoxicated. How would that carry over into the rest of my life? Well, I'm not going to be as focused and productive. I'm going to snap easier at my spouse. I'm going to feel a lot more anxiety and depression, and then that leads to, bad food choices, skipping workouts. And ultimately, the goal with living a holistic life is setting yourself up for success in all other areas of your life. So I can keep riffing on this, but I'd love to hear if there's anything you want me to specifically touch on that note.
No, I think you covered a lot, and I guess what you're telling me is I can't just go to a doctor and have them give me a pill and everything's going to be all right. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. And I'm not here to say you shouldn't go to doctors. I think doctors, like you just had surgery. That was awesome. Like that if you didn't have a doctor, we would have had to cut your fucking leg off, I had a shoulder surgery. So like doctors can be beneficial, but at the end of the day, for me, I learned this through my story is I have to take responsibility for my health and discern what is right and wrong for me. So doctors aren't bad. They just, at the end of the day, Paul Chek has this 4-doctor system, Dr. Happiness, Dr. Diet, Dr. Quiet, and Dr. Movement. We have these doctors inside of us. And before we start outsourcing and giving our power away, I believe it's important to optimize our own doctors inside of us. And when we do that, then if something goes wrong, or you break your leg or something happens, then go see a doctor. Like, I'm not against that. But at the end of the day, I feel as though as a society, we've just kind of, it's just easy, right? We want the quick fix. We want the quick diet. We want the quick solution, the quick money. And ultimately, when we do that and we opt in for the quick fix, you don't know the power of your yes until you know the power of your no. You don't, ultimately, if you're giving up so I believe that everything comes down to personal power. If you don't have personal power inside of yourself, it's just going to be a reflection into all other areas of your life. So
I'm actually glad you brought that up, because that is something I totally want to talk about. I know Paul Chek talks a lot about externalizing the self and externalizing our inner authority. And I think, it's, we're evolving as a culture. I think I think we're starting to wake up to this, but it's so easy for us to externalize authority and just take what the doctor says, the teacher says, the boss says, the parent says as just gospel fact, without being like, okay, this is a doctor's opinion. I very much respect his opinion, but I'm also going to do research on my end and come to my own conclusion before I just, whatever they say goes. And so that's been a big journey of mine, is like awakening to my own inner authority and know that like my decision making comes from within. My shirt, go within. My decision making comes within, and I can make decisions today with so much more confidence, knowing that like they might not be the best or the right decision, but it's like, okay, with everything I know and my experience, this is the decision I'm making, and I can tap into my own inner authority for that. So I don't know if you wanted to riff on that. Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I that's beautifully said, brother. And there's so much to talk about on this. When I started my company back in January 2019, the goal was ultimately help men get into better shape. Like I was very fitness minded, and I had all the strategy, the workout plan, the movement plan, the sleep schedule, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, what I realized is, as a society, men and women, we are looking for answers. And there's nothing wrong with going outside of yourself, like books, even social media has a lot of benefits. But as I dove deeper into working with hundreds of clients at this point, and running in-person retreats, and working with my own trauma therapist, and going deeper into this stuff, ultimately what I found is that I have to be able to trust myself. Because if you don't trust yourself and I don't trust myself, then I will consistently seek outwards, and I'll be in this dilemma of not knowing what the fuck is right and left and up and down. And that's where a lot of the mental health problems start coming in, is not being able to trust. You look at a child, they know what they need, they know what they want, they're able to whether you agree with how they ask for it, they don't give a shit about your opinion. They're gonna cry, they're gonna scream, they're gonna laugh. They have an intuition that is guiding them, and I believe as a society we've lost that. And so I believe, my trauma therapist, Dr. Hewitt, shout out, love you, Dr. Hewitt. She said to me when we first started working together, and I say this to all the guys I work with, is, my goal for you, Justin, is to become 100% wholly, truly, and fully you. And ultimately, that, like you mentioned, what you just said, man, it's like that is the journey. There is a right and wrong plan, but it depends on the person, and we all get to step into the mindset and the mentality of like, having the confidence, really, like personal power, and having the confidence to know what is right for me, because what is right for me isn't right for you. Like my good friend Cody Cottle, he always says there will never be another Jake ever again. There will never be another Justin Feldman ever again. There will never be another you ever again. And ultimately, that means that you are 100% unique to every single other organism on the planet. And so my point with all of that said is learning how to actually, and that's why I'm so passionate about health, is it is the fastest way to start learning and building your intuitive knowing of what you need and what your body needs, what your mind needs, what your heart needs. So just to riff on that, man, it's a great point. And ultimately, if we can all start stepping into that and regaining our personal power, it then gives us a light that we can shine on to other people, and give them the permission to be themselves. And that is what I believe, God put us here is to be that light, is to be that sign of greatness, so we can, our society as a whole can thrive. So,
dude, that's beautiful, man. You bring up a lot of good points. I wanted to shift gears a little bit. Actually, before I do that, because I bet people are wondering, I think what you're saying resonates, I know, with me, and I'm sure it resonates with other people. But I can also say, like, there was a point in my life where, like, I was listening to Paul Chek and hearing about him talk about the soul and, like, basically, soul is just a symbol. You can call it your inner authority or just the self within. And it's like, okay, if you're treating that as your internal authority and it's like, this is your decision mechanism, the question I think, I'm thinking of my past self is like, how the heck do you tap into that? Do you have tips and tricks for people who are like, oh, this sounds good, but like, I don't feel any inner authority. Like, how do I even begin to tap into that? Yeah. So quick riff on that, and then I'll move to the next question.
Absolutely. And the first thing I want to say is, I think this is really important. If you get nothing out of what I'm saying, like, hope you get this, is if you can't trust yourself, then you are ultimately not going to trust anything or anyone else. And so before I go into tips, I think it's important to say that, because building trust for yourself is absolutely critical. Building that love, and that is the answer. The answer is love. I said to you the other day, the problem with 82% of the U.S. population is overweight or obese. 43% are obese. We're at almost 1 in 2 people are obese. I don't believe food is the problem. I believe lack of love is the problem. And so ultimately, the farther we get away from truth, the farther we get away from actually loving ourselves and love. And if you don't love yourself, then what's going to happen is you will then, and I've had this plenty of times in past relationships, you will actually bring people in to fill a deep hole that you don't know how to fill yourself. Grant Cardone says a relationship is dictated on is not two halves coming together to make a whole. It's two wholes coming together who can lean on each other. But if at some point you it's not the right thing, you still have yourself. And so ultimately, the first step is love. That's the first, the middle, and the last step is learning to love yourself. How do you do that? Well, it starts in the little things. It starts with making your bed in the morning. It starts with small promises you make. Like maybe it's just maybe you aren't brushing your teeth maybe you're missing a day brushing your teeth. Whatever may be, the way that you build self-confidence and empowerment inside of yourself is you make a promise and you stick to it. You keep your word. Because at the end of the day, and this is, I'm really very passionate about this, and because I've seen it in myself, and basically a lot of our society is, we're fucking liars, right? We lie to our friends about how much money we make. We lie to potential lovers and women about whatever we need to say to be heard. And we lie about our sex. We lie about our health, our habits, and we really ultimately we lie to ourselves. And so the fastest way to build that is, it doesn't need to be big. You don't need to just like go on this massive these programs that you can follow that are 75 Hard and P90X and all these programs. You just start small. Like, say I'm going to drink a glass of water when I wake up, and keep that. It's like little habits. Ultimately, success comes down to the micro habits that you build up over time. And so the answer I have for that is, how do you create that? How do you learn yourself? Is you fail. Is you fail, you learn from that failure, and then you decide, you know what? I'm going to just do one thing that's going to make me better today, and I'm going to stick to it. I'm going to stick to it to the point where it becomes a part of who I am. And then I'm going to add something else and something else. So that would be my answer, is ultimately, the truth. The truth. I know the truth. Listener, the truth. Where you're lacking right now. Where you're falling off. And so really the first step is love yourself enough to face the hard truth. Even if it feels like it's self-hatred, it's not. It's just owning your shit, and then picking one thing you can do and sticking to it. Sticking to it like your life depends on it. Because at the end of the day, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. If your name is attached to it, it has to mean more than anything. So I know it's a deep answer, man, but I can riff on this for a while.
No, I love that, dude. And actually, I did want to bring something up you said earlier. It's a little tangential, but I think you're gonna have good input on this. You said is it your functional doctor? Dr. Hewlett?
Functional medicine doctor, yeah.
Functional medicine doctor, and how she told you her responsibility is to help you to become more yourself, right?
Yep.
Well, dude, I had a recent epiphany. You know, I started working with mentors that I pay for, like yourself, around this time last year, I guess earlier in 2022, and it's been a great experience for me, and I'm glad I've had the opportunity to invest in coaches and mentors. And I had a mentor, clever programmer Kazi, who I'm working with right now, say to me when we were working in person, because I was struggling with this idea of like, I want to help, like I want to, provide value for others, but he could sense that it was coming from this place of obligation. So he said to me, he's like, you have to approach your potential from a place of authenticity. You cannot approach your potential from a place of obligation. And that was just like, that hit me so hard. And just hearing you talk about Dr. Hewlett, it made me think of that. I don't know if you had anything to add. Okay. All right, cool. Well, that was that. And then, so now I want to go back to Wealthy Body and the men that you're working with. We already mentioned Craig Renz, and Craig, if you're listening, I love you, brother. Love your story. That guy is a freaking beast and a huge inspiration to me. And I know other people in the program. So my question is, I know you've worked with a lot of men. Many have unbelievable stories of losing weight, getting healthier, adding years to their life. My question is, what are some of the patterns you see in men that cause them to fall into these, negative, unhealthy patterns? And what are the tactics you teach to get out of that kind of hole?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think the answer to this relates to everything. Every area of your life. So whatever your goal is when you're listening to this, you may not be on a health journey. I think it's still going to be very relevant. Is we talk about inside of our coaching program. It's if you can imagine a cross. If you're watching the video, you can see me do this, but a cross, and called the Warrior 4. And ultimately, the cross, the top of the cross is mission. I believe that everyone needs a mission they're striving for. On the right and left is body and mind, and at the bottom is heart. And so why I explain this and why I say this is ultimately most men that I work with, they have a surface level mission, and so there's nothing wrong with that. Like, say, like one of my clients, Jeff Whitespear, he came into the program. He's lost, like, I think 40, 50 pounds, and he came in with a weight loss goal, which is cool. We all like that. That is important to have those goals. At the end of the day, though, it has to be deeper. And so one of the biggest challenges I see with the men I work with, and the men I work with, is ultimately having a deeper meaning. And that analogy I had, mind, body, and heart, is ultimately tapping into your emotions. Now, I want to be careful with this because I believe men are more innately masculine, meaning so more, order, structure, attack your mission, whereas feminine is more kind of like go with the flow, feel your emotions. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I can't tell you the amount of men I've worked with and myself who have let shame and guilt and lack of worthiness and fear and frustration and all these emotions hold them back. And so the patterns I see are they decide to embark on a journey. They're very motivated in the start. They want to lose 40, 50, 60 pounds. They want to make, $20, $30, $40,000 a month, whatever the amount is, 100,000, whatever. They want to, get married, find the woman of their dreams, or become a better father, or whatever it is. Good quality, past surface level goals. But the patterns is they fail to recognize that ultimately they are their own quote unquote worst enemy. And so what I'm trying to say is they let their emotions, like I said before, there's strategy, story, and state. They let their state dictate their story, which dictates their decisions. So like I'll give you an example. One of my clients, he was really struggling to eat real food. One of the things we talk about is jerfing off, just eat real food. And and he knew the strategy. He knew that he needed to do it. At the end of the day, though, he had a deep, growing up, he always felt really small and skinny and like scrawny. And so every time he would go to eat healthy, he had a story attached to that. And so he thought every time he ate healthy, he was actually going back to that skinny, scrawny version of himself. And so ultimately, what do you think happened? He self-sabotaged, and he kept going in this yo-yo pattern. And so the patterns are ultimately failing to tap into the heart, staying numb usually. So patterns are typically things like working to excess, drinking a ton of alcohol, using a ton of porn, drugs, sex, things like that are escape mechanisms to ultimately self-sabotage, like we talked about before. And so really, I always say it's like transformation, 90% transformation is just becoming aware. It is putting the awareness on that, and then the final 10% is what you do with that awareness. And so, yeah, does that answer your question?
Totally, dude. And I actually want to riff on that because, being as a part of the program, and being a part of your program specifically is really like the first experience I've had in this sort of community where we're all, you're the main mentor and the rest of us are the members, but the members keep each other accountable. And something I know we talk a lot about is the idea of the shadow self and how it kind of manifests all the time. And the goal is to kind of get on top of it, because if we don't, that's when we lie, like you mentioned before, and we bullshit ourselves into thinking we're being healthy, or our vices aren't that destructive or whatever it is. And I just know how powerful it's been to go to the group and be like, hey, you know what? I am struggling with porn right now, or I am struggling with not hitting my workout goals, or not eating healthy, whatever it is. And like, it's amazing because it's like, how many human beings want to just like hide their flaws, and like the last thing they want to do is talk about it. But then as soon as you're like, hey guys, guess what? I'm struggling with this right now. Someone else like, well, guess what? I am too. And then someone else like, well, wait a minute. I've been struggling with that like my whole life. And then now you're connecting, you're sharing strategies, and you're not judging, because it's like, why would you judge? It's like, if I judged you, I'm just judging myself in that case. We're struggling with the same thing. So that, to me, has been one of the most, I feel, resourceful and powerful experiences. And again, it's like being vulnerable, you want to feel protected. So it's good to know that I'm in a safe space too. It's not like I'm just going to any group. And I think that this is true for all men and women. It's like, men, find yourself a good men's group, whether that's at church or in an organization like this. And same with women. I feel like women need their own group. And I know I've been seeing so many more retreats and groups like this that are similar to yours. And I feel like, again, like we are moving in that direction. We're starting to wake up to this, and it's honestly beautiful to see. Did you have something you wanted to add to that? Yeah.
Yeah, and so I just want to, I totally agree, and I just want to say also, if you're listening to this and what I'm saying is like blowing your mind, you're like, what the fuck's he talking about, and this, or it just sounds really scary to share, I want to honor that, and ultimately it makes sense why one would not be like this. What we're talking about here is radical honesty, right? It's just being real about what's going on. And we're not taught this, the Industrial Revolution, men went off to war, women took over jobs, and men would come back, and they were trained in the military to be numb, and it's been it's been passed down from generation to generation. We're not used to talking about and feeling our emotions. But my point with all that is, in a tribal sense, if you say things that are vulnerable, it's like that could kick you out of the tribe in the past. And so I think it's important to understand that it is feeling that fear and not wanting to share, and just like covering up the truths. I get it. I've been there. Like it's not easy for me to share that, growing up, I wore oversized t-shirts. So embarrassed about how I looked. And then when I gained 30 pounds of body fat in a month and a half because I just felt so insecure. And then I ended up getting stretch marks and just felt disgusted with my body. Like, it's not easy to share that. It's not easy to share for me right now. I'm still going through stuff going on with my ankle and different things that are going on. At the end of the day, though, that's why I agree with what you're saying. It's so important to have people around you, because if you're in a tribe that is going to judge you, it's going to belittle you, it's going to bring you down, then that your brain, your nervous system doesn't know the difference between like someone making fun of you and like actually dying and like getting killed off. And so realizing that it's okay, you're not going to die. I'm not going to die for sharing these insecurities, or it's not even that big of a deal. And also getting around men and women who will not judge you, because like you said, everything's a mirror of yourself. So if I judge you, then I'm just finding something myself that I'm judging. Hopefully that makes sense to people. I can expand on that, but yeah, getting around people who are really going to support you, support your journey, allow you to be authentically, wholly, truly, and fully you.
Totally. I mean, man, Jesus said, "Judge not, lest you be judged." So it's not a new idea, but I think it's like kind of hard to wrap your head around. Yeah. Thinking like, oh, we're all connected actually. Okay, well, so I have two other points on here. Talking about addiction, and then also simple strategies for staying on top of your health. You want to start with addiction?
Sure.
Okay, so yeah, how do we overcome junk food, porn, drugs, technology, social media? I feel like this has been a perennial issue, obviously for all of humanity, certainly, but in the modern day, we've got technology, and it's almost like in my job, it's like I'm a programmer. It's hard for me to stay away from technology, and I do what I can, trying to be as balanced with my approach as possible. But dude, I do find myself getting in death scrolls or whatever on Instagram, and it's hard. So I have shared some of those types of strategies on my social medias, but I am curious from your perspective, because I know you work with men on these topics day to day, so would love to hear it.
Yeah, I love it. Ultimately, everything is addiction, right? Everything comes down to addiction. If you're struggling to get into incredible shape, it's because there are things that you're addicted to in your life that are, addictions are essentially a misalignment between your dream and your core values. There's a gap, right? You are where you are right now. There's a place you want to get to, and there's a gap that there's a race. It's like if you're going to run a race, there's a starting line, there's a finish line. And ultimately, if you are not running the race and moving the direction of where you want to go, it's because there are obstacles that you are not willing to go through. And so that's ultimately, when I see addiction, addiction is behavior that is out of alignment, that is out of alignment with where you want to be, and you don't want to be doing it, but you do it over and over again. Now, I think does that make sense? Yeah. And so that first and foremost is important to understand, because addiction isn't actually the problem. It is a symptom of a greater problem. For me, I've had, for example, for me, I've dealt with, 15 years of porn, right? I don't watch porn anymore, but it was a battle to get off it. I didn't know why it was such a battle. Like, I know why. Like, obviously it stimulates your dopamine receptors in your brain. It feels good. It's a quick fix. You don't need to go out and find women. It's just like it's on the computer screen. You can get as crazy as you want. But ultimately, I had to get to a point where I realized that porn isn't aligned with my ultimate destination. And so addiction is so relevant, because so many times we've talked about this a bunch, but so many times we give our responsibility out to external. And so when I hear words like my anxiety, my addiction, my depression, my sadness, all these things, you're essentially owning something that you don't want anymore. It doesn't make sense, right? Dr. Hewitt, a great story of mine, when I was getting severe migraines, I was on her table. I met her in San Antonio, and she is a chiropractor and masseuse, a bunch of other stuff. But she was working on me, and she is very sensitive to energy, and I have a scar on the back of my head, and she touched it and she just jumped because she just felt the trauma from it. So she asked me like, what happened there? And because I was getting really bad migraines at the time, I was like, oh, well, I was in a really bad car accident. I had a piece of glass in my head, and that's the reason why I get my migraines. And she stopped and she's like, what'd you just say? And I'm like, well, I said that's why I get my migraines. And she's like, your migraines? What do you mean? I was like, yeah, my migraines. I don't understand your point. And my ego is starting to get in a little bit. And she's like, do you want to own these migraines? Like, no, like, but they're my migraines. Like, what do you mean? I just kept challenging her on. She's like, if you keep owning these migraines, they're going to stay a part of you. And so that was one of the biggest realizations I ever had, was again, taking responsibility. They're not my migraines. They are headaches that are coming from something and I had to go through a long journey to figure out what was causing them. And we can get into that. But, ultimately, I had to realize that they are a symptom of the deeper core problem. And that's all addictions are. Addictions are things that a part of you, whether it's, we talk about inner child or these identities that we have inside of us, you're just addicted or an addict because there's a part of you that feels safer doing that behavior. There's in addictions, not analogy, but what is it called when a letter. So the word is halt, and each letter represents something. I forget what that's called. But anyway, so halt, it stands for, are you hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? Like just like asking, there's always, and that's just like a surface level, an acronym, yep. And so there's always a deeper level to the addictions. Now, the work is figuring out why. Why do I keep watching porn over and over again, even though I know it's bad for me? Or why do I keep eating junk food over and over again, even though I know it's bad for me? Or why do I keep having sex? Or why do I keep overworking? Ultimately, there's a part of your psyche that believes that if you get rid of this, it's life or death. And so really, again, 90% transformation is becoming aware. The final 10% is what you do with it. It's the work is understanding and realizing that there's a deeper reason behind the addiction. Because again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm a human being, and I've worked with a lot of men. I've done a lot of work on myself, and what I found is when you stop diagnosing yourself and start working on you as a human being, that's when a lot of quote unquote addictions start going away.
Man, that's powerful stuff, and I know it's good to hear that. Well, dude, yeah, I could go off on a lot of directions, but I do want to ask this one question. I wanted to ask about, because I think about people who like hear you and they're like, damn, I'd love to work with this guy, but perhaps they don't have like the money, or perhaps they, are unable to in some way. Is there like some free information or advice that you would give them to like stay on top of their health things? Maybe how do they start to think about their health in a holistic way and kind of apply some of these things we've been talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. My first suggestion is this, and this is what we teach inside of we're running a 6-week program for our retreat right now. And first things first is, we've talked about this throughout this podcast, but to give actionables is you just need to, number one, get clear on 2 things. Number 1, where am I right now? And number 2, where do I want to go? Before you make any lifestyle changes and because like, here's the reality. If you just skip right into action is important. And I believe that you need to take action towards achieving your goals. But if you just skip into that, then there's no meaning behind what you're doing. There's no deeper why. And again, this journey is too hard. There's a reason why 83% of the population is overweight or obese. It's not lack of information. You can go on, I literally Googled this the other day, type in best diet to lose weight. It's up to 1.9 billion results on Google. So like, information isn't the problem. Like, you can find the information. What is the problem is not having a fuel to keep the fire going on your life, is having a purpose and a why behind what you're doing. So like, if I were to give like actionables, listening to this, you don't have any money, or you're not ready to invest in yourself, Number one, I would switch that mindset in and of itself. One of our clients, Mike Fritz, he does millions in the real estate space. He did training for our men. And he talked about how, mentorship and coaching should be included in all of your other living expenses. So I do recommend that. But with that said, I'm not here to hard sell you anything. First and foremost, get clear on where you're at. Be radically honest with where you're at, and be truthful about where you want to go. Because if you don't have that, you've no clue. You're just it's just empty actions. There's no purpose behind it. So that's the first thing. From there, just start small, like breathing. Forget about working out and eating healthy. Breathing. The average person takes 12 to 15 breaths a minute. That's way too fast. They've actually found that the more breaths you take, the shorter your lifespan is. And so slowing down, getting back into your body, because at the end of the day, addiction or any ailments, that any kind of health issues you're dealing with, comes down to one word, and that word is stress. I talk about the concept of, like, you can either be a soggy piece of bread or a burnt piece of toast. Soggy piece of bread is someone that just sits, plays video games all day. Nothing against video games, but plays video games all day. Doesn't really get up too much. It's just kind of vegging out. Your body starts to rot. The other side of the coin is a lot of the men that I work with who are just doing a ton. They're working. They're on calls. They're sales. They're trying to juggle their family and traveling a bunch, and then you start adding working out and eating healthy and all these things. It just makes you more stressed. Both things are going to cause stress. So ultimately, you need to find a balance, a truth. And again, balance isn't the right word, but it is in that giving yourself the tools to combat all the stressors that we're dealing with right now. So the first thing I would say is focus on your breath. Slow down. Because I had a mentor once say to me, anxiety is just worrying about the future. Depression is regret or emotions that come from past experiences. Everything, any kind of transformation, anything beautiful happens in this present moment. And I know this is probably kind of esoteric, and more of the macro, and I can sit here and tell you should drink half your body weight in water. I can sit here and tell you should get at least 30 minutes of movement in per day. I can sit here and tell you should get 7 to 9 hours of sleep every single day and slow your breath down. At the end of the day, though, it does come back to mindset. It's asking this one question. So when you die, death is one of my motivators. When you die and you're rotting in the ground, and you have your family and friends sitting around the funeral, who are they going to remember? Who do you want them to remember? The answers will come to you. That's where the intuitiveness comes. You know what to do. So I can go deeper into action steps. What I would say is breathe better, slow your breath down. We talk about big belly breaths, so breathing through your belly, not your chest. That will put you into a parasympathetic, a more calm state. And then from there, start small. Drink more water. Move your body more. We talk about, we have a Swiss ball over here. There's things you can do that doesn't even take any of your time, like switching out your chair for a Swiss ball or standing up. There's just little things you can do that are actually very easy to implement that actually won't take any of your time away and will actually give you more energy throughout your day.
Dude, that's great. And honestly, you mentioned something in there that I actually would like you to riff on a little bit. You mentioned getting into the body, and we talk a lot in the program about embodiment. And I know, my podcast, Developing with Action Jake, I do have the health element, but it is primarily geared around technology and development. And I know from my own career, it's like to do this kind of work, to program, it is a very heady. Yes. It's very, and it's very clear how much time I spend in my head to solve problems and create and make things happen in this space. So I've had to that was a novel concept to me of you got to intentionally embody yourself. And I think when most people hear that, especially like in my world, it's like, they're like, what? Like, what do you like? What does that even mean? So could you actually riff on that a bit?
Yeah. So, yeah, I love it. And so, like Dr. Joe Dispenza, he talks about this idea of there's different brain waves that are going to put you in a more creative space. Most people are operating out of the beta wave, which is more of like just doing tasks. You're a little bit more stressed. You're just getting stuff done. But in order to really be creative and have it come from a place of inspiration, you need to get more into the alpha brainwave. And so I say that not to get like all nerdy with like brainwave stuff, but getting into your body is so important, because when you do get, I can speak on this because I grew up with ADD all my life, and you know, Jake was making fun of me the other day because I'm just so focused on creating and coaching all these things. I just leave my shit everywhere, and I come back, I'm like, oh, I'm just very, very forgetful on certain stuff, and it's one of my weaknesses I'm working on. But I say all that because, you know, being in your head is valuable. You know, solving problems is important, but it's kind of like the analogy I like to use is like this phone here. So my phone, there's a battery on the phone, and eventually when you use the phone enough, the battery will go down and it will get drained. And I don't know if you ever had this experience, but when the battery gets to like 1%, 2%, and you've got all your apps open, you're trying to get a whole bunch of stuff done, what happens? Yeah, it slows down. And so that is the analogy I like to use when it comes to creativity and productivity. Is you have to realize that your brain is just a super enhanced version of a phone, and so you will hit a threshold where your brain can no longer. They've actually shown in research it's about 25 minutes of max performance until you start losing that creative juice that you need. And so if you don't get back into your body, then what will happen is you will make the excuse, which I did a ton when I started my business, is make the excuse if I'm doing stuff, I'm working so hard, but you're not actually doing needle moving tasks, and you're not being productive. You're just doing stuff. So what does it mean to get back into your body? Ultimately, it is what it sounds like. It's stepping away from, like, a simple way to do this would be a step away and just you know, we talk about working in Tai Chi, doing things that's gonna just get you moving, because the faster you can get out of your mind just temporarily and just relax back into your body, that's gonna put you in that alpha state, and that's gonna allow you to come back and hit even harder. That's what, like, the analogy I like to use with health and working out and eating healthy. It's like, are you going to lose 30 minutes out of your day or an hour out of your day? Yes, but it's all about performance, not just about the time you put into it. So I can riff on that more. Did I answer that though?
I think you covered that. So last thing I wanted to say, man, because I think this is all really good information. Could you tell us where we can find you? And if you have any closing thoughts you'd like to share with the listeners, feel free.
Yeah. So, you can find me. My website is wealthywarrior.pro. We're doing a little rebrand that we haven't announced yet, but wealthywarrior.pro, that's my main website. We also do in-person retreats every 3 months. So you can go to wealthywarrior.pro/retreat, and that will take you there. But really, just, you know, hit me up on social media. Instagram is @thejustinfeldman. Feel free to message me. I'm just here to support. You know, the one thing I will end with here is one of my favorite quotes. Ralph Waldo Emerson has a quote where he says, "A forest with 1,000 trees started with one single acorn." And so my goal coming on, I just want to honor you, Jake, like, for doing this podcast. And I just, you know, I always say as a coach, like, I don't see the man that you are. I do see the man that you are, but I also see the man that the potential that God put on your heart and God's given you. And so for the listener, like, I just want to say, like, you are that acorn, and life is going to throw so many reasons for you to not put that acorn in the ground. Your life matters. Your health matters. Your wealth and your ability to just have happiness and love in your life, you matter, because when you plant your acorn, that allows the forest of 1,000 trees to grow. And so I just want to end with that and say, like, whatever you're going through right now, whatever it is, physical, mental, emotional, financial, just realize that number one, it's happening for you, not to you. For every darkness, there's a light on the end of the tunnel. And just to keep going, because there will never be one of you ever again. And without those trees, the world no longer has oxygen. And so for you, we need you. We need you to have oxygen. That's why I do the work I do. Is I believe in humanity. I believe in love. I believe in men and women in our roles and how important we are on this planet. So yeah, man, thank you for having me on here. And like I said, if anyone has any questions or needs support, like I'm always happy to. The social media door is always open.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here, man. And listeners, I hope everyone has a great day. We'll catch you on the next one. Boom. Give me a hug, brother.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, come here. Love you, bro.
Love you too, man.
Woo.